When I sell the products of my own labor on the market, I get all the money myself. But what if I'm selling my labor to someone else? If I sell my labor to a capitalist for a wage, the capitalist can pay less for my wage than he sells the commodity for. Thus he transfers the inequality of profit in exchange into the production process. Let's take a closer look. When I sell something I've made myself on the open market, I'm selling a commodity. When I sell my labor to someone else, I'm selling my labor power. That is my capacity to do work. How much I produce is subject to how hard I work, the quality of the tools and the materials I use, and the organization of the workplace. I'm paid by the hour, so the harder I work, the more I can produce per hour. Thus, the amount of money I am paid doesn't necessarily correspond to the amount of value I produce. In fact, if it did, the capitalist wouldn't be able to make a profit at all, and would therefore have no reason to engage in MCM in the first place. This then is what capitalists do. They profit from inequality in the sphere of production instead of inequality in the sphere of exchange. They're modern-day pirates. Why are workers willing to work for less than the value of what they produce? Well, wages, instead of being related to the value of commodities workers produce, are related to the amount of money necessary to reproduce the worker. This is a fancy term for what it takes to get the worker to show up to work the next day. This usually means paying a worker enough for rent, food, entertainment, and whatever else the general standard of living in a society requires. This cost of reproducing the worker varies from place to place over time as the standard of living adjusts to the whims of capitalist development. For instance, the standard of living for most Americans has fallen in the last 30 years, making labor cheaper for capitalists to buy. But it still doesn't explain why workers consent to this. After all, they choose to work for a wage rather than simply produce goods themselves. Well, many people do choose to work for themselves if they can. In fact, as real wages have fallen in the American economy, the percentage of self-employed people has risen. But in order to produce commodities yourself, you have to have access to tools, materials, a work area. We call all of these things means of production. In a capitalist society, a small amount of people, capitalists, own the vast majority of the means of production. Thus, workers have no choice but to sell their labor power for a wage to a capitalist. This has caused some people to refer to wage labor as wage slavery. And this didn't just happen by accident one day. The process by which simple commodity producers, farmers, craftsmen, etc., were deprived of their means of production so that they had to work as wage laborers was a long and violent process. It demolished communities, destroyed cultures, eroded feudalism, etc. This process, accomplished by dispossessions, outright theft, and usury, is often referred to as primitive accumulation, to differentiate it from the capitalist accumulation it made possible. Along with the profits of merchant capital and usury, primitive accumulation provided the money and capital needed to deprive most of the world of their means to produce and concentrate these means of production as private property in the hands of a relatively small class of people, the capitalist class. This then is what capitalism is, the process of circulating money into commodities into more money with the aid of wage labor and therefore exploitation in order to make a profit for a small class of people, the capitalist class.